Review, what's been making headlines around the world. Sally and I will take you through some of the headlines. The talks in Minsk on the future of Ukraine dominating the agenda. The Moscow Times suggesting a peace deal alone will not fix Ukraine. The paper says the country needs serious internal restructuring.
This is the Wall Street Journal's front page saying, the Asian edition, it has this picture of Greek finance minister arriving in Brussels yesterday. The headline reads, Greece faces battle on debt. It looks like a stalemate at this stage.
Like quite a few other papers today, the Daily Telegraph puts on its front page a picture of this man here, the captain of the Costa Concordia as he used to be. He's been sentenced to prison, found guilty of manslaughter.
President Obama has formally asked Congress to authorize military action against Islamic State. The resolution would enable U.S. forces to conduct limited ground operations to rescue personnel or target IS leadership figures. That's in the Gulf News.
Following recent takeovers in Europe and the United States by Chinese companies, the Financial Times has picked up on a small detail. The Chinese, are cutting out the traditional middlemen, the investment bankers. They're doing the deals themselves.
And The Guardian reviews the movie version of 50 Shades of Grey, calling it smouldering, self-obsessed sadomasochism. It gets a rating of just 1 star, and this is following its premiere in Berlin.
Yeah, that might be the personal view of the reviewer, of course, but all reviews are like that, are they not? Mark Davis is here, CEO of the business strategy consultancy firm Camberton.
Morning,
50 Shades of Grey, our very last story. Quite a fun one, but let's see what happens. Okay, Ukraine, and the Moscow Times is looking at it from various angles. Let's look at it from the economic angle first of all, because Ukraine needs a massive fix, does it not?
It does.
But Russia is suffering. Its economy is contracting, and there's a big squeeze in Russia as well. So the conflict is affecting both countries, clearly.
Well, it is. I think it's affecting the population, the civilian population, worse than it's affecting anybody. Some of the stories that are coming out of there take you right back to 1930s. There are all sorts of historical parallels here that people have talked about. But I think the most obvious one is this humanitarian position in the 1930s and the appeasement of the 1930s. It's only a year ago that we were saying that Russian troops had to get back to their bases in Crimea, and now we've effectively ceded Crimea. So, this is clear appeasement of Putin, who is, yes, struggling economically in his country because of sanctions and because of oil prices, and as a result, he's a man under immense pressure, and the tension is palpable, I think, with the leaders there.
He is under a lot of pressure on the international stage, but actually at home in Mother Russia, his ratings seem to be going up and up, even though the economy is being hit by the sanctions and equally so by the fall in the price of oil. However, in Ukraine, on the brink of financial bankruptcy, desperately needing help now, which the IMF is saying it's close to agreeing to further help for Ukraine, actually. But it is quite different, isn't it, in terms of the pressure on
in terms of the way that he's viewed.
And Putin.
Yeah, Russia has always liked strongmen leading them. That is obvious, again, from its history. I lived in Russia for a couple of years in the early 90s. And they were crying out at the time for some strong leadership at the time that they didn't have any, and Putin emerged from that. And interestingly, he's probably not the most conservative person who could be leading Russia at the moment, so that in itself is problematic. Were he to fall, he might well be replaced by somebody who is even more hardline than he is. So I think this is a very difficult situation for everybody involved, but principally for the people on the ground there, the humanitarian position is fairly disastrous.
Yeah, that's right. 1 million internally displaced, 600,000 having left Ukraine, and 5.2 million or so living in conflict areas. It's quite incredible. Sally, you want to go for Greece? You like Greece?
Well, it's my top story and will remain so for some time. And this is obviously a picture of Yanis Varoufakis as he entered talks in Brussels yesterday, went on for 6 hours. As I said to my guest in World Business Report, I'm not surprised at all to hear they couldn't come up with some sort of agreement yesterday. It's going to roll on until next week. Your thoughts, Mark?
Does he look like a man who's about to blink? He looks extremely pleased with himself in this photo. And I think that's probably because he knows he's going to get some concession, because Europe's leaders don't want Greece out of the euro. Of course, the Greek population...
That's the official line, but it's quite interesting. There are lots of rumblings about losing the weakest link. Now the Eurozone can do that in a way that they couldn't in 2009. And there's lots of talk in the German press about the fact that a Grexit is a possibility.
There is, but if you lose the weakest link, then you gain a new weakest link. And the question is what happens to the next country. And I know there's been a lot of strong talk and saying, oh, we can cope with this now. I think the real danger for the people who back the euro is that Greece comes out, and as a result of the fact that it has control of its own currency, albeit that it doesn't have a strong economic position, doesn't have a lot that it can sell, it suddenly finds that its economic situation improves. And countries where there is 25%, exactly, 25% unemployment, 50% youth unemployment, for example, in Spain, they suddenly turn around and say, maybe we're better in a situation where we aren't tied to the currency as we are at the moment within the euro. It needs fiscal transfers in Europe, and there isn't the political will at the moment to have those fiscal transfers. And in the absence of them, there aren't too many other ways.
So your money is on a fudge, and
I think there
not
will be
not an exit.
Look, no, exactly. I think that the debt repayments will be pushed out so that it's easier for Greece to pay. He will get something. He's clearly going to get something. They won't let him walk away with nothing.
In the Daily Telegraph, that night in January 3 years ago, I was working that night, and I was making calls while I was off air to water taxi drivers who were talking to me about picking people up who were jumping off the Costa Concordia.
Mm.
And he could have got Francesco Schettino 26 years. It's 16. He'll surely appeal as well.
He will appeal. Assuming the sentence is upheld, he'll be in jail till he's 70. And obviously the last 3 years, his life will have been, to put it mildly, significantly affected by this. But I mean, this is a story of a man who effectively was trying to get his wicked way, and as a result of that, 32 people died. And it must have been, to be one of the families of those who were killed yesterday. And, okay, it's been obvious that he was asleep at his post for, since this first happened. But to have it confirmed by the court, I just can't imagine what the emotion must have been. To know that somebody died, or a loved one, a member of your family died, as a result of just such idiocy on the part of somebody who was just meant to be doing a job. You don't expect that.
You don't. Not much more to say about that. Let's now move on, because, of course, this is an interesting development going on in the United States. Gulf News has got it on its front page. Obama seeking a nod to wage war on Daesh. Now, this is talking about Obama looking to get involved in a more significant way when it comes to fighting Islamic State.
Yes, I mean, Daesh obviously is ISIS to us in the UK. This is the Gulf News, and that's the Arabic term for it. Yes, it's interesting here because Obama, of course, he's famous for having drawn a red line and then allowed it to be crossed during the course of his presidency. And now all of a sudden he's going much harder line. And what makes that interesting is that it's the Democrats who are very sceptical about the position that he's taking, and the Republicans who are pushing him on. And equally famously, he hasn't really succeeded in getting much across.
Break the lead and put some boots, special forces, whatever they may be,
Well, I
on
think
the ground, because they can't expect the Arab nations to do all the hard work. It's going to need something on the ground.
Look, I think that's absolutely right, but you could have argued that 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And at the time, Obama, when you might have thought that an early move would be a better move, he was extremely reluctant. And now, at a time that you might think he could say, well, I can always leave this for my successor, he's suddenly taking a much harder line. So I think it's an interesting turnaround.
Now, Mark, you're a deal maker, an entrepreneur. What do you make of this story about China?
Well, my heart's bleeding for the banks, obviously.
Yeah, we do, that's right.
So this story is about how acquisitive companies in China are cutting out the banks.
They're using their own...
And they're using their own in-house people. And the result of that is that where $11 billion were paid in fees by US companies involved in merger and acquisition activity last year, only $400 million was paid by Chinese companies. And I can hear the gnashing of teeth in some of the big banks from this distance. It is a very interesting one. I've been involved in a few takeovers and M&A situations, and oh, my banking friends would absolutely kill me, but I've always been slightly sceptical about what they add to the party. Certainly, whether they add as much to the party as they charge for.
Maybe others.
So I'm not really entirely surprised.
We'll look at this and follow suit. Anyway, we must leave time for 50 Shades.
Yeah, The Guardian says Peter Bradshaw, writing in Berlin about the film 50 Shades of Grey, giving it 1 star. Have you read the book?
I've read the first 6 chapters of the book, which means I haven't got to any part of it that actually gets interesting. But, God, you really have to trudge through it to get even as far as that, to be honest. I did like the line in the Daily Mirror today. It said it's more M&S than S&M.
Ah, very good. I'll tell you, the best line I've seen is a Twitter account, which is 50 Shades of Gran. It said she always had a line of men behind her, waiting. Why does she always have to pay at the supermarket with small change? Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Mark Davis. Thank you very much indeed.
Bye.
Take care.
Have a lovely day. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.